Welcome to Optimal Play. I'm Brandon.
And I'm Dennis.
And if you are a regular watcher of Optimal Play, you know that for Arkham Horror, the card game, we do this style of video where we go card by card reviewing the new products. And I've been wanting to branch out into other games lately. We've actually recorded, and I think it's not up yet as of this time, but Lord of the Rings Journeys in Middle-earth. And then
Nice.
So I've got my eye caught by this little game that's on Kickstarter called Deck of Wonders. It's an expandable solo/co-op card game that I'm eager to take a look at. Dennis, have you heard of this?
No, I'm here to provide that fresh eye perspective for someone that's not familiar with it at all. So I'm the crazy person designing this game, and was so thrilled that you were interested in doing this video, and am excited to just watch people process through the cards and all that stuff. So I was excited to jump on it and talk it through.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled to have you here. This is going to be a first, as we're kind of giving our quote unquote review of the cards. It's the first time I've ever been face to face with the designer. So
Yeah. Well, I'll give you the caveat, which should make things easier, which is this is terrifying for me as well, because I'm designing the game, and I've got a relatively good head for this kind of game, TCGs and CCGs and all that stuff. But I also know there are way better card game players out there. Like, I did a ton of Hearthstone back in the day. I never got to Legend, that sort of thing.
That haunts me too.
Yeah, so I've put together something that I'm really proud of and really excited for people to get their hands on. I also fully expect that as smarter people than I, yourself included, and probably way smarter people than both of us get their hands on the game.
Right.
They're just going to find all the broken combinations and cool synergies and just fun stuff you can do with it, that then I will claim to have put in intentionally.
Right.
Or if it's broken, I will claim that I'm on it to fix and say thank you for catching that. That was totally not my intent. So
Right. Well, hopefully by then people will have forgotten that this video exists, so they can't go back to the video evidence.
Yeah, this should be fun.
Yeah, I'm really excited. So I know Deck of Wonders. Well, so you've sent me a prototype of the game, so I've gotten a chance to play it, and there's also a demo of it on Kickstarter, or not on Kickstarter, on Tabletop Simulator, I should say.
Which you can get you through the Kickstarter.
That's true. Both of which I'll make sure to link down in the video description. And so I've played it a few times, and yeah, so it has legacy elements, Deck of Wonders does, right? Where the game kind of unfolds as you play it a few times. We will not be spoiling anything from that.
No spoilers here.
Yeah, so we're going to focus...
This is all like first chapter stuff.
Exactly. We're going to focus on the first villains cards and the first batch of player cards that you might use to play against it. But, before we get too much further, we have already had some videos on Optimal Play. We have kind of an instructional and playthrough video. And there's currently a link to, damn it, there it is. Yeah, there we go. There's a link up there to it, where I taught a friend to play Deck of Wonders, and then hang on, go watch it before I spoil how it ended. Good. All right. And we got our asses kicked by it. And this is also not the first time that I've spoken to you on here, because the very talented illustrator of the game, Lauren Brown, joined it, and all three of us debuted a piece of art from the game a few weeks ago.
Yeah, so, Pixie Mesmerist, which we'll talk about again here, just from more of a mechanical standpoint.
Right. So I don't plan to re-teach how to play the game here. I hope that you've seen one of those videos if you're watching this, because usually our target audience for these card reviews are kind of people who know the basics of the game. But I know that you're really good at giving kind of the elevator pitch for what Deck of Wonders is. Would you indulge us? Would you just give us a quick summary?
Happy to. So Deck of Wonders is a solo legacy expandable card game. There are a lot of adjectives in that sentence, so we'll unpack it. It's a solo game. This is a game that is solitaire, you versus the rules. And my inspiration for that was the fact that I'm a parent of young children. And I love deep, complex board games, playing Gloomhaven with friends, or you mentioned Journeys in Middle-earth. I'm in the middle of a solo play of that as well. Or any of those just like really, really complex games I love. And also they usually take 8 hours, 6 friends, and 2 tables worth of space to play.
Right.
And that just doesn't exist in my world right now. You know? For me, that's because I'm a parent, but you don't have to be a parent to have that problem. Like everyone is having their life blown up and busy and crazy in all the same ways. And so my hope was to create something that you could play on your terms. That you can play something that has that depth, has that complexity and fun to it. For me, I enjoy those things.
Mm-hmm.
But it, can be played in 15 minutes while my kids are asleep. Or
Right.
if you're a student, can be played between classes or on lunch break if you're at work. And that's what Deck of Wonders is an attempt to do. It's a legacy game that is not Destruction Legacy. And my God, I've had so many people come to me and be like, please, just don't make me rip up cards. Like, I don't want to rip up cards. I don't want to put stickers on stuff. I don't want to deal with that. And I hear you. So this is not Destruction Legacy.
Man, I love Legacy. Like, I'm all about ripping up the contracts and cards and Clank Legacy and stuff. So you're not going to get that complaint from me, but
Yeah,
I'm glad that you're covering everyone's bases.
You can sticker your cards, and that's as far as I go. Is you can place stickers on cards to upgrade them and track your progress and stuff like that. For those that want to keep their cards clean, you can totally track that in the rulebook instead. You place the stickers just in the rulebook, make notes. That means a little extra bookkeeping is on you, but
Sure.
For some people that's totally worth it, and I respect that. And in general, that's been my philosophy with Deck of Wonders. Is this because it's a solo game? Is a game I want you to enjoy on your terms. So there's legacy elements. If you don't want to track the stickers on the cards and you put it in the rulebook, chase your bliss. If you want to open the last legacy pack first and dump everything out on the table and just ignore the story and go for it, chase your bliss. Like, this is for you. And then it's an expandable card game. So I don't know if you know anything about those. It's like a game that has cards and you can get more of those cards. It's like more in discrete sets than in booster packs.
Yeah,
you should really check it out. I feel like you'd like it.
Played one or two of those. Actually, I have the feeling many people who have come across this video or who have subscribed to Auto Play.
Yeah, so this is sets of cards. It also takes a ton of inspiration from games like Hearthstone and Magic the Gathering, where you're summoning minions and casting spells onto a board, trying to control it, outdamage your opponent, and you and the villain are kind of facing off across this battle of your minions. And that's very much the vibe going on. Yeah.
Right, yeah, so it's a little bit... It'll have a tableau where you have a few minions and a handful of spells, and so does the opponent. The opponent is just operating on something of an AI, right? A rule set that they follow.
Yeah. And I call that the priority system, and we'll get into why. And you'll see, all the minions have priority, and we'll get into that. But my goal with that system was to be able to replicate the experience of playing another player in a CCG, but make it so that the player isn't just doing the homework of the villain, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not fun if you are just playing out rules on the villain turn and kind of moving the pieces according to a fixed set of rules that aren't going to change. And so the priority system does that, but gives you agency while you're doing it. And so, the villain is going to follow a set of rules, and those rules leave blanks for you to fill in as the player that, depending on how you handle those blanks, are going to swing the battle in your favor or against you.
That is... Okay, yeah, actually, that's a really smart design goal, I think, because I completely agree.
Thank you.
Most of the time in cooperative games, you are kind of... It is... I mean, it's interesting because it impacts you, but it's a little bit of a chore to play out the infections and pandemic or whatever it is. And
Gloomhaven. Just kidding. I love Gloomhaven. That was actually an inspiration for this game. So
I actually, and this is going to get everyone to turn off the video. I don't love Gloomhaven.
Oh, okay. Well, then,
so you don't have to. Yeah. But I definitely am in a minority. So I think a lot of people will be glad to hear of both that inspiration and that lesson learned from Gloomhaven, it sounds like, right?
Yeah, that's the idea anyway. Hopefully I've achieved it, and we'll talk about that in the cards tonight, and then I'm excited for people to get their hands on the game as well, to kind of figure it all out for themselves. Yeah,
and speaking of which, I'd be remiss if we didn't make sure to plug. So I think this video is going up, we're not live streaming, but it'll be going up September 7th-ish, the start of that week, and so there's going to be a week or two left on the Deck of Wonders Kickstarter at that point.
Yeah, September 17th is the last day
for
the Kickstarter. It's funded already, which is like mind-blowing beyond my wildest dreams. Like,
Congratulations. Yeah, you must be getting a lot more sleep after that threshold than
yeah, this has been like the month leading up to the Kickstarter launch was ridiculous. And we can get into all that somewhere else, but to have the community response that this has gotten is just humbling and thrilling and all those things wrapped into one. So
awesome.
But anyway, yeah, the Kickstarter ends on September 17th. I imagine, I'm going through a pledge manager, so there will be a late pledge option or what have you. But certainly that, being that initial person stepping up to support this game when it's in its most nascent phase,
right,
is something that is just invaluable. So, yeah.
And on that, we were talking off camera a little bit, but we are like the card. I always like to have the physical cards in my hand for these rather than reading them off the screen or something. The pandemic situation, not the board game, but the real life pandemic has turned me into more of a tabletop simulator user than I used to be. But I'm definitely a fan of having the physical goods in hand. So you'll see me reading these, but these are not necessarily set in stone, right? So
yeah. So I would say the design is like 90% there. In even some conversations I've had with previewers, there's been really insightful stuff on what might get buffed, what might get nerfed. We might even have some of those conversations tonight.
All right.
And so I think those tweaks will happen, but I expect the game that you get you'll be able to still see all the direct analogs in what we see tonight. And so still valuable conversation. And I would be surprised if more than one or two things get tweaked up or down.
Right. So yeah, it
is. I mean, it's worth saying for people that are watching this while the Kickstarter is still going on. Your voice, like our conversation here will be great for it, but your voice chiming in the comments or on the Kickstarter on what you're seeing based on your experience in Tabletop Simulator, that can impact the game. Like I love collaboration. Every time that I've opened up and had people come in and input and yes, and the game has gotten better. And I love that. So it is very much like something I hope the people spark to enough to give feedback, and that feedback will be heard.
Yeah, it's a pretty unique one of these card review videos, where you can comment and actually review the card too. You can in time for it to your opinion on it to be heard before it goes to print. Whether or not that's going to make a difference, is up to Dennis, Dennis and his team. But
yes.
We're in a unique perspective, whereas usually we're looking at games that have that are already on the store shelf. They are what they are, but clearly the game is finished or very nearly finished. Well, I don't know about obviously, but if I didn't like it very much, I wouldn't have suggested that we did this video.
Yes, that's right? An endorsement, I guess.
Yeah, sure. So I think very highly of the game, and I'm excited to dig into both to just kind of have that. Like part of the appeal of these is just kind of reveling in the details of a game a little bit, because that's fun. Right?
Sure.
Like that's why I mentioned that it's not up yet, but we did that with Lord of the Rings: Journeys in Middle Earth, because with an LCG like Arkham, like we're not alone. There are lots of channels that review the cards and things, but in board games, there's not a lot of content that like really digs into what's going on in the game.
And that game too, just the idea of like multi-classing over the course of a campaign. Like I've played that 3 or 4 times, not all the way through co-op. I'm playing through a solo run now that I'll hopefully finish. And I'm still just sticking to the base classes. So the idea that people could dig in and be like, just assessing it from that angle is really, really cool.
Yeah.
Also,
I've been really enjoying it.
Can you explain why I never draw successes when it's absolutely critical?
That is just part of the magic of the game.
Heart of the cards, right?
But yeah, I've been really enjoying trying to broaden those horizons, because I think that type of that level of discussion doesn't have to be reserved for card games that come out with new cards twice a month.
Yeah, well, and it too, like, I mean, everyone who plays these games is thinking on that level, and really that is, as a game designer, I almost put up air quotes for as a game designer, but no, damn it, I am a game designer.
That's right.
As a game designer, that is the exact same type of thinking and assessment that goes into it. And if you've ever made a house rule or talked after you've played a game about, what I think would have been interesting, or what they could have done better, or this was frustrating and sucked, I hope there's something that changes. That is all the same thought process that goes into what I and other game designers are doing. So it's always so cool to see like this kind of conversation is so at the heart of what game design is. And I think there's a ton of people that have these conversations and don't realize how close to the ring of game design they are.
Sure.
And so almost like, using this as a wedge to open up and be like, you can do this. God knows, like the only reason I have to believe that, because the only way I believe I can do this is to believe that anyone can be a game designer. And so, I think doing these conversations is valuable on that level as well.
Try to hold off on having the existential crisis while we're while we're on video, but I like the philosophy.
Yeah.
Okay, without further ado, should we dive in?
Let's go. Yeah.
So there are 14 cards that I plan for us to talk about. 7 of them are kind of recommended that you play against Colin, the initial villain in Deck of Wonders.
Spoiled Prince.
And then there are 7 cards that 4 copies each becomes kind of his contribution to the deck that you are both playing with, right? So it's kind of like the villain builds half, the player builds half, right?
Yeah, so of note, your collection is 3 times bigger than what we're going to see tonight. And whereas the recommended decks will always be 4 ofs, you have the agency as you start to tinker and customize to always do 1, 2, 3 of as you see fit. And so the deck that you wind up playing with could have way more cards than, even just against Cullen, could have way more cards than we talked tonight. But this is Cullen in his most distilled form.
Sure, yeah. And so these are the exact cards that if you were to go on Tabletop Simulator and play the demo that's available, right? I think you would see this exact deck. It's a little different than what we played with in our playthrough video a couple weeks ago, because I did do some customizing. I wanted to, I wanted to add a little variety compared to the demo to what viewers of that video would see. So so even after this, if you haven't watched that, you can see a few more of the cards in action on there with placeholder art, but all the same. And there were a couple, I can touch on them as we get to them, a couple least favorites among these that
a couple trap cards.
Yeah, that I was eager to remove. So it didn't save us on our video.
Sure.
But it was good to get them in there. All right, so for a couple reasons, I chose Pixie Cavalry to start with.
Yes.
Yeah, so chief among those reasons, this is the art on this card, and we can get to in a second the duality of the art and these cards themselves. But hear a bonk under the table there. So this Pixie's steed is a corgi, and on the playthrough video, I teased maybe having a cameo from my corgi. And then we were recording in like a 100-degree room, and I did not follow through. But tonight, we're ready. So Neville, come here. Yeah, come here, buddy.
Yes.
So tonight, there we go.
Yes.
Neville.
Hey, buddy.
Neville joins us. Nev, here, speak into the microphone. Yeah, no. Neville joins us for the Pixie Cavalry review.
Yeah.
So
a noble steed.
That's him. Oh yeah. I have a soft spot for this card. I actually need to at some point make this like my iPhone screen, like my lock screen or something, because I love this art so much with featuring the corgi. Don't get tangled in my cord.
Lauren Brown, everyone, by the way, LAB illustration on all the socials and the web generally. Is amazing. You can see, I mean, she does so much stuff beyond Deck of Wonders, although I'm partial to the Deck of Wonders stuff. But yeah, she did this card justice for sure.
Yeah, I have been supporting him. I've been supporting her on Patreon since our interview video a little while back, and so I've gotten to see even more of her work, and it's all super cool. And she's a Zelda fan, so we see eye to eye on a lot of things. Yeah.
She's okay.
I did not actually have 2 corgis. My other corgi is named Link, so I'm that crazy a Zelda fan.
Nice. Well, my son is named Link. No, that's not true.
You would have me beat.
I don't know, pet parents anymore? But yeah, that's awesome. What a fun cameo. So yeah, and this is, so just to talk art for a second.
Yeah.
Pixies riding corgis is not my idea. That is an actual thing in folklore that has existed like way before me, and I only discovered when I was talking to a friend about wanting to have a pixie riding something.
Huh.
And he was like, you should put her on a corgi. And I was like, oh, that's a good goof. What do you really think? He's like, no, seriously, dude, go look it up. And it's absolutely true.
He's ready to get down. Let me.
Yeah.
Okay, goodbye, buddy.
If there is a leash, if there is a line, anything like that, dogs will find a way to tangle themselves.
Yes, yeah, no doubt. So anyway,
yeah, Pixie Cavalry.
Yeah. So the other reason that I thought this made sense to discuss first is because it seems like kind of just the most. So it's a minion with no rules text, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that it will have flavor text, I imagine, will be a part of this game eventually.
Absolutely.
The cards that I currently have the images for are pending flavor text. But it has 2 attack, 2 priority, and 3 health. And so as a 2/3, it's abbreviating getting rid of the priority for the moment.
I do the same thing.
Yeah,
I do the same thing.
I've played a lot of Magic and Hearthstone, so it's definitely it's the way I think. I'm going to have to keep giving the dog treats until they're gone. Otherwise, he's going to jump into my lap.
You thought this was a cameo. Really, now they are.
Yeah, now he's hosting the show.
Uh-huh.
Now, for this segment, Neville gets a treat.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, as a 2/3, it seems like a real, just kind of run-of-the-mill average minion, right? Like, not that any corgi would ever be run-of-the-mill, but...
yeah, this is that card that every set has like, all right, no rules, just stats. You know, like let's just how big can you make it? And I think a 2/3 is about as good as you're going to get without some kind of cost. Which we should talk about the mana system really quick in this game because
mana system.
There is one. Yeah, there is a mana system. Part of the vision for Deck of Wonders is that it's very portable and you can play it with just cards. You know, thematically, the Deck of Wonders, it's very diegetic that you're playing with a deck of cards and nothing else.
I don't think I know that word. But carry on.
Making sense within the logic of the story. And so...
Siri heard something that she wanted to respond to there. I don't know if that picked up on the microphone. Okay.
I can start Siri trolling you here.
As soon as you add a corgi to a video, it's all downhill from there. I
know. You've peaked. You can't get any better than that. It just starts falling apart.
Yeah, sure. That's why it falls apart.
Anyway, so there's no mana system. There's no tokens. There's no trackers. It's just cards. And so if you want to play something bigger and stronger or with a more powerful effect, usually that is costed by requiring you to discard other cards from your hand. And there's other games that work that way, and it works very well if you build around it, if you design around it. The Pixie Cavalry is free, and it is a 2/3 for free. Free as in you don't have to discard anything else, which is about as powerful as you're going to get stats-wise without needing to discard something. And so that is, the Pixie Cavalry is meant to be that benchmark of like, all right, how big do you get for this tier of minion?
Okay. And then part of the reason I like it, and I think I would run it as it seems to me like a really staple card that I would put into a lot of decks, largely because it has higher health than attack, which means so any card that you put into your deck in Deck of Wonders, the villain also might play. And if you notice this card is double-sided, you flip it over, and in this case, it's also a 2/3 that the villain would play. But the villain gets to attack with it right away. The villain cheats a little compared to you, who has to play things exhausted.
The villain is favored by fate.
There we go. Okay. That's
check that off the marketing bingo.
Next time I get accused of cheating at a game, I'm gonna be like, no, I'm just favored by fate.
See how well that stands up.
Yeah.
No, casino officer, I'm just favored by fate.
That's right. But so in like kind of the mirror match or the situation, Pixie Cavalry against Pixie Cavalry, like yours is not going to die, I guess, because they would do 2 damage to each other, or both would survive. And to me, that's been really important, is what can I do to play minions and make them stick? Because the villain, if they can, is going to attack your minions, get them off the board. And until you can kind of get a tableau of 1 or more minions going that's going to be around to act on your turn, you're pretty limited in your agency to control the board and to start dealing damage to the villain.
Yeah, and I mean, it almost feels like a tautology or kind of trite to say like, to be able to control the board, you have to have minions on the board, right?
Sure.
And so, but it's that's universal in card games. Is you need something that is sticky. You need something that'll stick. And the Pixie Corgi, the Pixie Cavalry will do that if if it faces itself, or three health. This is a relatively small numbers game. 3 health is fairly beefy, right?
Right.
So that's likely to survive a lot and give you a presence, which then gives you agency and gives you options. I think the thing to be careful with on that is Pixie Cavalry demands follow up on your side, where it demands friends. In that, if once you do get a 3 attack minion on the villain side that can take it out, it's not gonna trade very favorably in most cases. So I think in Cullen's set, save for Hungry Wolf, every minion with 3 attack or higher will survive Pixie Cavalry, which means you can use Pixie Cavalry to mop up a bunch of little guys, which is fantastic. That's what you want to do with it.
Yep.
But if you get unlucky and the villain pulls something larger, which we'll get to in a second, you're gonna find yourself in a world of hurt where you lose that cavalry and you didn't stabilize or trade. And so, you need to get Pixie Cavalry out there. It'll hopefully live and do something, but if all you have out is Pixie Cavalries, eventually the villain's going to take advantage of it. Sure. Eventually the villain is going to gain the advantage from you only having the cavalry out there. And so to either get it out and then get it behind something bigger, or to get it out alongside other priority 2 minions that give you options is important. Which, by the way priority works, for anyone not familiar, is the higher the number, the higher the the higher the number, the higher the priority, and the sooner the villain will focus on that minion.
Right.
And so, making sure that there are minions that can protect lower priority or minions that are higher priority but will survive is important. Right now it goes 1 to 4, and it can go up from there potentially. But right now it goes from 1 to 4 or down. Yeah, negative numbers here. And so that's something to weigh in the effectiveness of the card as well. Right.
And yeah, I think you're right. I think you summarized it really well. Pixie Cavalry feels awesome when it's attacking those 1/1s, those 1/2s that are on the opposing side. Once it's facing a 3/3 or a 5/3, which we'll see some of those coming up. Less excited about it. But
which, as a designer, that's what you strive for, is the situational usefulness, right?
Right.
I would rather trade a Pixie Cavalry or use a Pixie Cavalry to mop up smaller minions than something bigger and more expensive. But it is not as great versus the bigger, more expensive things on the villain side.
Sure. Yeah. So the next card is the Hungry Wolf, which is another. I think there's 3 total vanilla minions. I think I'm flipping through the cards to make sure I have that stat right. Yeah. So this is the second one. You mentioned this as you were convincing me that the Pixie Cavalry wasn't as good as I thought it was.
Yeah.
Because this Hungry Wolf is 3 attack, 3 priority, and 1 health, which makes it. It's actually, so it trades evenly with the Pixie Cavalry.
Yeah, so it will get taken out in turn, but it'll 1-for-1 with the Pixie Cavalry. That said, and again, small numbers game. 3 attack is fairly threatening in the world of Deck of Wonders, but you don't expect the Hungry Wolf to survive long. It's emaciated, it's starving. A little tragic story there.
Right. Yeah, which is why on the villain side of the card, the wild side of the card, we see it. Is it attacking a troll? I don't think
it's attacking. Yes, it is. I
don't think I've gathered that that's what we'll see a troll later on here. That's what this is.
Yeah,
that might not go well for the wolf.
Yeah, it is a tween troll, so it's like an adolescent troll, or I think we've decided that it is a twoll. Tween troll.
Love it.
Which is an act of aggression born of desperation. The lore around trolls is that they're essentially like an element of nature gaining consciousness. So it's like there's not meat on those bones. There's not much great to eat on a troll. But this Hungry Wolf is so desperate that it's going and attacking a troll, probably to its detriment, because it needs to take some action. It needs to not go. It wants to go down swinging, as it were, which is what you expect the Hungry Wolf to do at 1 health.
Yeah, I guess so. Man, that is That is a little bit of a downer, though. Poor wolf.
No, poor wolf. Actually, as we get into the other art in the game, the wolf kind of turned into. Have you seen Ice Age? It's like the animated movie.
Well,
From
I've
forever
seen
ago.
one or two of them. There's
Okay.
like 7 of them.
Yeah, there is now. The wolf kind of started turning into Scrat from the Ice Age. It's like
Shows up everywhere.
Yeah, it shows up everywhere and always gets to the short end of the stick. The poor guy.
Oh, this poor wolf.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's again, it's super situational, right? Like if when you play it, you can kind of hide it behind some other minions, which is a little tough because it's high priority.
Harder to do because it's higher priority than the Pixie.
But it can crank out a lot of damage towards the villain in particular. That seems to me to be the best way to use this, because as soon as it attacks into a villain minion to try to control the board, it's gone.
Yep.
Against almost anything. Yeah, with one exception.
Well, and this is a free card as well. Again, no special card text, no requirement to discard. Which means if you have to trade something into a big scary minion, you want to trade the wolf. Which again, there's that tragic element. Man, this went dark. I'm sorry. Where you kind of you unleash this thing on its prey, not really expecting it's going to survive that long, or you get your pack of wolves going after the villain, and they can just tear them apart because they're so ferocious. So you want it for that, but it will also just straight up lose to anything with one attack. The tiniest little thing can take advantage of it.
The slightest breeze.
The slightest. All right. I'm the dad. I get to make the dad jokes. Yeah. So it's that situational usefulness for a card that's free. It's right. Also, I think Hearthstone trained me to value attack more than health. And generally, if you look at the way minions in that game are statted, there is a weighting towards attack in terms of what costs more. And so it was almost like, all right, I don't just want to have a 2/3 and then a 3/2. Sure. That feels a 3/2 feels too strong. However, a 3/1 for free feels a little bit better. Especially because in a game and against Cullen, one of his special rules is that your health starts at 20. And so 3 damage is 15% of his health.
Yeah.
And so the opportunity to crank on him with that amount of ferocity you pay for by having less health and having this minion be very fragile.
Makes sense. And then the art that we debuted on Optimal Play.
Yes, and some of my favorite art in the game.
Yeah, it's awesome. So a card that I will always have a soft spot for, the Pixie Mesmerist. So it's one more vanilla minion, but I feel like this has more kind of like subtext to it than the last two, because this one has 1 attack, 2 health, and 4 priority, which is the highest that occurs in. I think you disclosed that in the whole base game. Like I haven't played through all the content yet.
Yeah, it goes 1 to 4 right now.
Okay, and so she is not that powerful. You don't really need her to sit back and be cranking out damage, which is good because she is who the villain's going to target first.
And this is an interesting showcase of how priority affects the way that you balance, and then 2, how between the sides that you balance. So yes, it seems objectively less powerful because it's a 1/2 versus the Pixie Cavalry's 2/3, of course. But you have to factor in that it is a 1/2 on the villain side as well. And so if the villain pulls it, it's way less scary than if the villain pulls a Pixie Cavalry. At the same time, its priority on the player side, which is unique to the player side, its priority is much, much higher. And kind of thematically, the Mesmerist is like this razzle-dazzle kind of thief rogue showman, showwoman, I guess, kind of feel, where she gets all up in your face, she distracts you, she then pickpockets you, and before you know it, you're focused on her instead of the important thing. You show up to fight a forest troll, and then suddenly you've spent an hour, talking with this pixie or staring at this pixie,
right?
While the other minions run rampant. That is the power of Pixie Mesmerist, and so having a minion that can cover for anything, that can draw the attention off of literally anything else in the game, is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, and so she's exactly what you want. Like, we talked about how that hungry troll, if it can hide behind other minions, it can crank out damage, right? Like, Pixie Mesmerist is what I'm talking about. You put her in that 4 slot, and she can distract the troll on the other side of the board for a round. She gets squished, but she does it.
but she's free.
Yes.
And so priority, yeah, the fact that you are valuing a card not just for how good it is for you, but for how bad it is for the villain, or how how much agency it gives you when it's on the villain's side, is just as important as your stats, and then just as important is the priority level, which is a fun fact is there are a ton of pixies in the game. I think there's 2 in this set, and then there's 2 in every other set, and for the most part, they are 1/2 creatures, and then everyone has something special that it does on top. So the Pixie Cavalry in this case is a +1/+1. And then
you hear that, Neville? You're just a 1/1. Poor guy.
Oh yeah. It's a very impactful +1/+1 if I do say so myself.
I think you're at least half a hungry wolf. You're a 2/1. You are hungry.
Yeah.
And I'm out of treats.
So he'll abandon you in no time then. And yeah, then the special thing about the Mesmerist is that it is a 4 priority.
Right. Yeah. And so would you say, I'm curious, so it's 4 priority, something that, as I guess for lack of a better way of putting it, since there's not a direct resource system, but kind of that you pay a premium for? And
yeah,
I'd be curious then, would 1 priority also be? Because that seems also very strong, because it means anything can kind of protect that, right?
Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking through the 1 priority minions in the game. I gotta be careful because I always get mixed up what I can and can't talk about.
Sure.
I don't know what I've revealed myself. But yeah, 1 priority is generally very small, not very threatening.
Okay.
And so that's actually, it's a huge anomaly that the Pixie Mesmerist would be a 4. And in general, like if my goal with priority was if someone trying to evaluate the cards looked at this and said, okay, if I was facing down the player side of this card, which one would I want to take out first? And generally, like on that scale, 4 priority is going to be closer to the top, and 1 priority is closer to the bottom. And so it's a really cool design tool to be able to say, like, if I need to buff this or nerf this, make it easier or harder to protect, or make it easier or harder to block with it, and that can factor into the card's power. All situational, right? If it's a minion that you want to have protected, lower priority is stronger. If it's a minion that you want to be blocking for other minions, higher priority is stronger. And so yeah, some of the minions in the game that are 1 priority that you can actually do some work with. I'm thinking, and I think it's in the base set. Sorry if it's not. The Trained Wasp. Trained Wasp is a 1 priority minion.
It is. If by base set you mean in the core Deck of Wonders box, it is. It's not a Cullen recommended.
Yeah, it's not Cullen's card. I think. Yeah.
Yeah. It is one that we put in on the video playthrough.
Excellent. Okay. Yes. Good.
Yeah.
So Trained Wasp is a 1 priority minion.
Okay.
And so part of its power is the fact that it can kind of zip in and under the radar, people don't notice it until it stings.
And that's the one that also enters play ready, right? I think that's what got my attention. I could not have told you what its priority was. I think that's the reason I was like, oh sweet, and threw it in the deck.
Yeah, very cool. So yeah, priority has that impact, and so even on 3 minions with no card text, you can kind of see the way the balancing, the decision making between the player and the villain side, how priority factors in. Hopefully that adds a lot of depth there.
It seems to me. And speaking of low priority pipsqueak minions, next is the Gnomish Servant.
Yes.
Which is 1 attack, 1 health, 1 priority, and comes with an upside. When you play it, you draw another card. And on the villain side, also, if the villain plays it, the villain draws another card.
Which is interesting, right? Because card draw is always incredibly powerful in any card game. Because it makes literally whatever else is on the card free.
Yep.
However, the way Deck of Wonders is balanced, card draw is not nearly as unique for the villain as it is for the player. So, a 1/1 with draw 1 is okay for the villain. It's always going to serve up something else, but at the same time, there's a lot of cards that do that for the villain. For you, this is super special. There's not many times where you can just straight up get another card.
Yeah, and it feels great. Like I love this card for that reason. You can, with one priority, you can most of the time get good use out of this too, right? Like it's likely to survive. It might just poke the villain in the nose for 1 damage at a time for a couple turns, but actually usually survives a while. And the fact that it replaces itself in your hand and can either be the deciding factor in taking out an enemy minion or get a couple damage on the villain usually. It feels great. I like this card a lot.
Yeah. I describe this card as gasoline. Like it's an accelerant. Whenever you use it, it's going to speed up the game. And the downfall is if you don't want that or you are not ready for that. And it's really interesting when you're not sure if you're ready for it. And so it's like Gnomish Servant is almost always your go button if you have it in your hand. Because it's like you want as much information as possible, and so you want to find out what that next card is. You're only investing a 1/1, but that is like your, that's the starting gun, and to kind of renege out of that and be like, oh wait, no, never mind, I didn't want to play anything. Great, I just lost my Gnomish Servant for no good reason. So if you're, I run into playing a lot of situations where it's like, all right, I think this is my turn. I think this is the swing turn that I've been playing for. Gnomish Servant is the starting gun for that swing turn.
Interesting. Okay. This probably just shows how I can get better as a player because I really often just windmill slam this onto the table when I draw because I'm going to draw another card. Like there's no downside.
Interesting. Right? Yeah.
I don't want to say I always do because hopefully I can identify the times when it's going to die to no benefits and like hold on to it a turn or two. But I would not say that I'm particularly judgmental with playing the Gnomish Servant.
Interesting. Yeah. And maybe I'm too precious. I lose a lot of games because I wait for the perfect turn. Like I'm patient to a fault, which is it's that I want everything to be perfect, which shows up in the way I obsessively play test and balance the game.
Sure,
it shows up in the way I play as well, where it's like I wanna know that this is the optimal play. Hey,
love it.
I wanna have all the combo pieces ready to go. I want to get the big. What I designed this deck around. And sometimes that just means I wait too long and maybe I'll get it, the combo I was waiting for on the turn I die,
Right.
But yeah, in the way you trick the villain AI is having multiple minions out on your side at once. That's what gives you the agency to start, really doing some interesting things. And so anytime you are choosing to put a minion into play with Gnomish Servant, you are wanting to follow that up or have him have friends.
Sure.
In my mind, and again, I said it at the top, I'll say it again. I'm not the best card player out there. I'm having a lot of fun designing this game. I think I'm really proud of what I've made, but I also know there will be people who are going to be objectively better at playing this game than I am.
Sure.
So
yeah.
That's where I come from on it, where the Gnomish Servant serves as a starting gun, as an accelerant for you. And if it comes out for the villain, yes, drawing a card is powerful, but a lot of villain cards do that, and it's only a 1/1, and so if you're playing right, more often than not, you have something that you can trade it into, or trade is the wrong word, but run the Gnomish Servant into before something bigger takes it out.
Right. And this is, before we move on, one of my favorite art dualities.
Yes!
The mild-mannered gnome kind of butler with the dish, and then the reveal on the other side that it's full of snakes and
poisonous snakes and critters. So it's interesting. I geek out about lore stuff as much as I do about mechanics, and everything in Deck of Wonders we've tried to take one step left of typical fantasy. So my first rule was no elves, no dwarves.
Nice.
Those aren't going to exist here. But so what are all the other fantasy creatures? Well, there's gnomes, and traditionally they are either tinkerers mechanically or they're obsessed with wealth. And they're trying to build their capital. And so the idea behind gnomes in Deck of Wonders was, what if they are social tinkerers? And what if they're obsessed with social capital? That they are a culture that is very much built around kind of manipulation and pulling the strings from the shadows. And they actually consider it crass to hold power directly, because that means you're on the hook for if anything goes bad, and you should be skilled enough to manipulate things from the shadows anyway. So what are you doing holding a title, right? And so whenever you see a gnome in Deck of Wonders, you or in the world of Deck of Wonders, they're probably the butler, right? They're probably the waiter. They're probably, working behind the scenes, but they're also probably pulling the strings. And so you need to be afraid of this Gnomish Servant, not because of the 1/1 that it is itself, but because of whatever it's about to serve up when it gets a card.
I like it. I was listening to a video game podcast recently. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called The Level. And one of the and one of the hosts described the game as delightfully malicious. And it made me... No, I'm kidding. That was your podcast. And
was it me who said that?
Yeah,
or was it
it was.
Oh, hey, there we go. It's like Lucky Charms there.
Yeah, you were talking about I think a Souls-like game that I have not played. But
okay, there you go.
But I was like, yeah, delightfully malicious describes a lot of kind of the characters that appear in this game, and in a way, kind of the game itself. Right?
Sure, that's what we're going for. That whimsical can have an edge to it. Is the theory behind
and it's charming. Like it'll draw you in with colorful art, and then it will beat you up.
Oh, I have to tell the story of we were talking about this art on another show, and someone asked what our favorite art, me and Lauren respectively, was. Mine was Gnomish Servant. At the point I think it's still true. I'm not sure, but I was like, I love how we took gnomes and we made them like handsome and kind of sexy and suave and stuff. Mm-hmm. And then it's just absolutely evil and contorted on the other side. And we get done, and Lauren's like, Dennis, I didn't specifically design the gnome to be hot, so I think we've just found your type. Like, oh, I guess so. So there we go. But awesome. Everyone sees their own thing in these cards.
Right. Okay, now we're to... I guess I kind of arranged them... I didn't do this all the way through, but I did all the player card minions and then all the spells. Mm-hmm. So next up is Lightning Strike, a card that in front of me is a placeholder art, but you've revealed the art.
Yes, so hopefully that's on the screen.
Via the Kickstarter. Yes, I'll have that on the screen. I kind of hate this card though. It's mean.
Yeah. Tell me about your relationship with Lightning Strike here.
So yeah, on the player side, it costs a discard, and then it destroys a minion with 2 or less base health, but it does draw you a card afterwards. Mm-hmm. And which is an interesting. We can talk about that. It's an interesting kind of cost that like there's a handful of cards that require you to cycle a card from your hand.
Yeah, it's almost thinking of them as mana, right? There's stair steps that you can do. There's free, there's cycle, and then there's cost, right? Mm-hmm. And I don't have cycle as a keyword. It's just discard one and then draw one. And it's that stair step where it's like, I don't think this should straight up cost you another card, but it probably shouldn't be free either.
It at least makes it so you can't play it if you have nothing else in your hand. Mm-hmm. Right.
Which again, I love because it goes situational. Mm-hmm. If you're holding a combo piece that you don't want to get rid of, it sucks to have to pay that to play Lightning Strike. Right. However, if you don't like what's in your hand, if you have a dead card, suddenly you're thrilled and Lightning Strike is helping you out. Mm-hmm. So it's always, you're paying in a way for Lightning Strike with information. You know what's in your hand, which gives you, which makes you more empowered, and you are trading that for something unknown. Trading
the known for the unknown. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. Which again, sometimes that is straight up better for you because you know what's in your hand is bad, or you know what's in your hand isn't useful. Sometimes it's really painful and nerve-wracking because it's like, okay, which card do I jettison? What's left in the deck for me to draw?
Right.
And is that going to be better or worse than I have in my hand? Do I, is it worth me playing the other card that I have, and holding Lightning Strike for another turn, hoping I get something that I'm more comfortable getting rid of? And you can chase yourself down that rabbit hole all day.
And then who this is better for is the villain. On the villain side, it just says destroy the highest priority player minion. Mm-hmm. It does not share the same restriction on base health. And because with some exceptions, like one we've seen, higher priority minions tend to be the stronger ones that you paid more for. This has a real way of taking out that minion that you were counting on cleaning up the board or closing out the game.
Yeah, it's pretty punishing. Especially if you only got one minion out there, right? Mm-hmm. And this is, I can't emphasize enough, building a tableau of minions gives you more agency. Yeah. And this is one of those reasons, because if if you've only got one minion out, it is both the highest priority and the lowest priority and the most medium priority and the first attack, and it's going to die, right? As long as something like this comes out. So yeah, that can be punishing. What other thoughts on kind of how you kind of what got you to, what was the final straw in you removing it from the deck?
I think it had just killed, and we haven't looked on here at the Forest Troll yet, but it just killed the Forest Troll for like the third time. And I was like, I either pulled a trick to, again, we'll look at these in a moment, either pulled a trick to get it into play or paid 2 cards for it.
Oh, I hope you didn't pay for it. Yeah.
And then it just gets lightning struck before I get to do anything with it. And even in the, like, kind of the counterplay to this feels like it would be, well, play Pixie Mesmerist and that kind of thing that sits in that top slot. But most of the time, you're playing Pixie Mesmerist because you want her to protect your next minion in line. And then when she's gone, then that minion just gets beaten up by what the villain has in play. So
that's right.
I don't find that it's as, I don't find the counterplay, at least that I've come up with around this, to be like, I haven't figured that out, if it exists.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is one that I took out of frustration for
that. Honestly,
when modifying
that
the
might
deck.
have been the right decision for Cullen's deck, at least in that context. One thing that I've tried to do with the pre-made decks is not hand the player a solved puzzle. The pre-made decks all give you a fair but tough challenge, right? You will be able to win with them, but you will also be able to optimize them. And so I think one interesting thing is that with Lightning Strike, some of the key minions that you really want to make sure you can get out of the way are 3 health, which puts them just outside of range, which is frustrating as hell. And so in this deck, yeah, maybe you want to trade that out for something that can address those. Then again, there's also like Poison Toad is a prime candidate for a Lightning Strike. Or a Gust of Wind, which we'll get to, and a Hungry Wolf that has come out on the villain side is a prime candidate for that. Those are high value places to play Lightning Strike, but they also will die to the spell that affects 1 health. Where you could really get value out of Lightning Strike is probably in other decks and versus other minions that one would hypothesize have 2 health.
Yeah, right.
And are out of range of some of the other spells.
What I swapped this out for, even though I also kind of had, as I mentioned, in mind keeping the minions and spell counts the same, but what I kind of felt served the same purpose in the deck was that Trained Wasp, because it's a 2/1 that can attack on the turn you play it, and so that can take out anything with 2 health, right? Barring taunt and things, but so I felt like that could do what this does, but also had the flexibility to not trade and attack the villain or what have you. So to me, that felt like a better card.
Yeah, it's interesting. The other thing, and again, like Deck of Wonders has a little bit of weirdness where it's not a perfect analog for anything out there right now. There are absolutely times where you will, have an empty board, and because you are saving up or because you're not ready to press play on whatever your swing turn is, you're going to intentionally wait. In that scenario, you love to see Lightning Strike on the villain side because it's not going to do anything and it's going to end the villain's turn. Yeah,
that is an important thing to note about this card. Is a lot of the cards that could situationally do nothing for the villain have draw 1 on them, right? So they'll draw another card. This is an exception though. This one can actually just full on whiff, and the villain doesn't get any benefit out of the card they drew that turn, which is nice when it happens.
Yeah, well, and the problem is you have to make it happen. And making it happen means keeping your board clear, which is like, that's super counterintuitive to what you would want to do to win.
Yeah.
And so, there is, in that situation, pulling the Lightning Strike does nothing, ends the villain's turn, gives you an extra turn. Pulling the Trained Wasp, you take 2 damage to face on the villain side. And now you have to deal with that in some way because that's now 2 persistent damage. So I won't argue with you that Lightning Strike is I would put it higher on the list of candidates to swap out. At the same time, I think you can be very competitive while still playing with it in your deck.
Okay. All right. I'll buy that. And tell me, so I think this art looks awesome, but I would be lying if I said I was really able to tell what's going on.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Obviously, the top side is a tree being struck by lightning. Like, kind of what's going on at the bottom?
Yeah, on the bottom side we have a poor ent getting struck by lightning.
Oh, okay. So it's not an ent in the top,
No,
but it is
yeah.
the bottom. Got
So
it,
you
yeah.
can, if you look closely in the top, you can see there's actually an ent in the background of it. The little guy being like, "Oh no," in the
Oh
background.
yeah. Okay. Okay.
And so on one side, it is the tree getting hit, and the ent freaking out about it, and on the other side is the ent getting hit itself.
Gotcha.
And that's that high, destroy a minion in progress there. Also, it's the first time that we've seen the lower half of ents, which is a fun little piece in Deck of Wonders. They're like Ursula the Sea Witch from
Oh yeah.
Little Mermaid, only
They
it's
kind
with
of-
roots and moving
They
around.
glide around on those roots. Oh, I like that.
Exactly.
There
Yeah.
you go. And you said there was no cosmic horror in this game.
Yeah. Yeah. Tentacles confirmed.
All right. The slight breeze that I alluded to earlier is
Yeah.
next. Gust of wind. It does this. Oh no, I was about to say it does the same thing on both sides. Not quite the same.
Oh yeah, fate favors the villain. So
You're right.
yeah.
If the player plays this, it destroys all minions with 1 base health. So that would be a lot of the ones we've seen: the Gnomish Servant, the Hungry Wolf, maybe those two. But there's a handful of
Poison
others.
Toad. Oh my god.
Yeah,
Poison
we haven't
Toad.
gotten to that yet.
Important
But
to remember that one.
it is. And then on the villain side, it says destroy all player, or excuse me, I should emphasize it differently. Destroy all player minions with one with 1 base health. Crucial distinction because the villain does not wipe out its army of Gnomish Servants. It only wipes out yours.
Yeah, this is also one of the spells that does not draw again for the villain. So this is one of the spells that can straight up whiff.
Mm-hmm.
And it can straight up whiff on a full board for you, which is hyper useful.
Yeah, and this is actually another one that I took out, partly because I was adding the Trained Wasp, which is another 1 health minion.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, yeah.
And I guess I was more worried about this being drawn by the villain than being drawn, than being used to take out the villain's wasps.
Yeah. If this is interesting. Okay, so now the tables have turned. If I had to pick one card that was overpowered for the player and that might get nerfed, in a couple different forms, I would pick Gust of Wind.
Oh, interesting.
Yes.
Okay.
And the reason being is that it is highly situational removal. So the player has to have a 1 health minion on board for this to get value, and even then, it's probably only taking out one health minion on average. Now there are those turns where you play 3 Hungry Wolves, and then the villain draws a Gust of Wind, and you're screwed. Like there's nothing you can do. But a lot of times what'll happen is the villain draws Gust of Wind, it whiffs, and that's the end of the villain's turn. Whereas when you draw this, you choose when to play it, or you choose to use it as discard fodder. You could get massive swings off of it because it's an AoE spell. And so I found, I think in Cullen's deck, which this is the context we're evaluating it in, so I think that makes sense. In Cullen's deck, it feels more balanced because there are more 1 health minions. Imagine if you were playing a deck that only had just a few 1 health minions. You, the player, can make sure you get the value out of Gust of Wind, whereas the villain will be infinitely more likely to waste it. And that puts the player way in the driver's seat.
Okay, I'll have to give it another shot.
Yeah. Well, you might have to give it a shot with kind of more the expanded set of cards.
Of course,
to see it in play.
Yeah, I've played primarily the Cullen scenario is not quite the word, but primarily played against Cullen, and I mean I've played a handful. You can count on 2 hands, I think, the number of Deck of Wonders games that I've played yet.
Sure.
So
that's a cool thing.
Yeah, it's a small sample size, right? Yeah, I'm definitely learning as I go, and I'm eager to keep learning.
Yeah, I've had 2 other previewers say like, "Dude, Gust of Wind is OP."
Really?
Like, yeah.
Okay.
So it's my eye is on it from a balancing perspective.
Interesting.
And players mess around with it. Unfortunately, you don't have players. People watching mess around with it. And let me know what you think. You don't have the benefit of having the full base set of cards at your disposal and everything like that. But I think even within the Cullen set, I would love additional perspectives.
All right, yeah. Let us know if it's a highlight For you or highlight for Colin?
Yes.
The last of our player card options is Earth Shield.
Oh, can I go back a bit?
Oh yeah.
So if you look on the villain side of this, I mentioned the Hungry Wolf being like Scrat from Ice Age.
Oh, is the Hungry Wolf in here?
The Hungry Wolf is on the villain side of this in the background.
Oh, it is.
The poor guy.
There's another card that I've noticed it on. I did not see it here. Oh, that's very funny. Yeah. Oh.
Lauren is hitting
wolf.
stuff like that all over this art.
And the gust of wind does destroy the wolf. So.
It does, yeah. It takes out the wolf, so it's perfect when it's on.
Love that. So Earth Shield is the last spell that we're taking a look at. It says, place onto a minion. The first time that minion takes damage, make that damage 0 and discard this card. And on the villain side, it does the same thing. Place onto a villain minion. Villain doesn't draw it, then give you the choice to put it on your own, unfortunately. And it draws another card. I have mixed feelings about this. I actually think it can be very strong, but it's also probably like the most counterintuitive card in the game that of the cards that I've played with. Because it protects a minion. It's kind of like Divine Shield in Hearthstone, right? It makes it the next damage is reduced to 0. But the way it interacts with the villain's AI is the villain is only going to attack your minions if it can kill one that turn. So it doesn't see, well, I attack and remove the Earth Shield as like a potential play. So sometimes Earth Shielding your minion causes all the villain minions to just sail past at your face, right?
Yes. And we'll get to Reinforced Dam in a bit, but the learning experience that every new player has going through this game is they get down a Reinforced Dam, they put an Earth Shield on it, and they're like, this is unkillable now.
Yeah.
And then they realize, oh crap, that means that all the damage is coming straight to me. And
yeah, your minions don't have taunt.
Where you can back up something that's shielded with other minions to get value out of it, it's going to cause you to lose some health. That minion will be more likely to survive, and that's great. That's the idea of the card. But yeah, like you said, it's got that counterintuitive twist where, and I think this is one of those places where the villain AI kind of behaves smarter than you want it to. Because what you want to do, and what oftentimes a lot of players do, is they say, oh, well, it's got the shield, I'll trade a minion into it so that the shield is lost, the minion attacking dies, and the minion being attacked lives.
Right.
And that's not actually the way that
it won't do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
you can't, since the villain is more likely to ignore it, then you can make that trade on your turn. Right? Like that. Exactly. That is the benefit of, sure, it might actually be, I would say that this is not nearly as good a defensive tool as it looks on its face, just for that reason. But what it does do is it means that your Hungry Wolf or whatever can take out a large minion on the other side and survive.
Or best of all, a Poison Toad, which we'll get to. Like a shield on a Poison Toad is very powerful. Because
on the Poison Toad. Yeah, because I was going to note that Poison, and the Poison Toad we'll get to, Poison is a keyword in the game that presumably will appear again. But this interacts a little weirdly with that because it does not prevent poison from killing the minion that is shielded.
What happens in Hearthstone?
Right.
So it is. I played with it both ways, and I liked the balance much better when a minion with poison damage can take out something with a shield on it, and in the same way, something with a destroy effect. So like lightning strike and gust of wind that we've seen, those will work through the shield as well.
Right.
And so the shield is absolutely your tool for kind of minion battle supremacy. As it
were. Yeah.
Knowing, like you said, that will probably mean if that shield puts the villain's ability to kill the minion out of reach, it's going to attack you instead.
Right.
Yeah, it is. It also is the one card that will give you control with the same set of villains on whether or not they can destroy a given minion on the player side. Because let's say you have a Pixie Cavalry with a shield on it, and the villain has a Gnomish Servant, a 1/1, and a Forest Troll, a 5/3 on their side. If you force the Forest Troll to attack first, then the villain can't kill the Pixie Cavalry. If you force the Gnomish Servant to attack first, then it can, because of which attack is blocked by the shield. And so the shield gives you a lot of agency, but it is also very easy to put yourself in a situation where you're taking way more damage than you want.
And that might even be an area that I don't completely understand. So you order the villain minions before they decide whether they can kill something. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a weird like you draw the battle lines,
Mhm.
and then the villain plays out the turn according to the order that you've set, and it can't change that. But based on the results of that, it will change what the villain does.
Okay, so you can see that it's possible for them to take out your shielded minion, but only if they are in a certain order, and then not put them in that order. Right?
Yeah, or if you want to save the health coming or save the damage coming to face, you put them in that order. Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting.
It's like I've been working on this game for a year and a half now. That is the one piece that I can't find a like really concise, intuitive way to explain to players. And once people grok it, it's like, oh, okay, it's like this, but there's not a good articulation for this. So it's interesting, yeah. And the Earth Shield gives you a ton of agency, but it also works in some really tricky ways.
And I think this was the one other one that I took out. This was largely because I didn't want to put myself in a position where there was going to be rules questions or really difficult situations on the videos.
Hands down, it's created the most rules questions.
Yeah, I believe it. Okay, so those are the recommended player cards to go against Colin, and then there are 7 more cards that are always in Colin's deck. Starting with the big boy that I feel like kind of defines the whole matchup, which is the Forest Troll.
This was the first piece of art that we did for the game.
Oh wow! Okay, yeah, I know that I've seen it on a lot of your materials and everything. It's a fearsome card. so it has 5 attack, which is I think by 2 the highest attack on any card in this set of cards. 3 health, 3 priority, and if you're going to play it, it costs. I say that because there are other ways to cheat it into play that we'll look at. But if you play it from your hand, it costs you 2 other cards from your hand. And then on the villain side, it's also 5/3, and it has a downside. It destroys 1 other villain minion.
Yeah, downside from the villain's perspective. Upside from your perspective.
So, right. Yes, good to clarify. So this, it's by like pretty much. I feel like the matchup with Cullen is decided by who gets the most hits on the face with Forest Trolls, right?
Yeah,
because it's 25% of your starting health in that matchup of both sides starting health. Man, yeah. I mean, is that? Do you feel in your mind is this kind of a scenario designed to revolve around the Forest Troll? And I know it's also, and this is it's not spoiling anything that's not on Colin's card, but his legacy goals, one of his goals to move through the legacy content involves playing Forest Trolls, right? So
which is another way to incentivize using a card in a certain way, because like you said, it's very expensive to straight up play. And so I wanted players to feel like they were getting something for that expense beyond just within the game. This absolutely defines the battle, one way or another. I hope it's not straight up just like whoever draws the most trolls wins. But using the trolls correctly and getting them to stick is absolutely crucial.
I would say if it wasn't clear, I don't necessarily think it's whoever draws the most, but it's who sticks the most and who lands the most.
There you go.
Them,
yes.
Right? Yeah.
Whoever can stick trolls will end the game very quickly.
And so you're looking at your hand a lot, thinking about what am I holding onto in my hand so that I have this ready if a troll appears.
Yes.
Right?
Because nothing feels worse than getting yourself to top decking and drawing a troll.
Yep.
Because not only is that a dead card this turn, you know it's a dead card next turn as well.
Right.
Unless you use it for discard.
It still means the villain didn't draw it.
This is true. Although, the fact that a troll destroys a minion is a great way around something that's shielded. True. It feels really good if you got if there's a reinforced dam, which we'll talk about on the villain side, and they draw a shield and you have to put the shield in the dam, and you're like, okay, well, I'm not getting through that for another half hour. And then they pull a troll that just stomps the dam.
It's true. Or my favorite is a troll stomping another troll. You wouldn't think that troll on troll violence. Great minds here tonight. So it's definitely it's not a double-edged sword like that downside for the villain is a good thing for you. I'd say that it leads to big ups and big downs in the feel of the game, because if this is the only if the villain's board is clear and they draw this, that just hurts. Right? They just got this 5/3 that gets to immediately act. Yeah. And they do not have to pay the downside because they didn't have any minions to destroy. On the other hand, if they already have a troll, or they have, like, my favorite is when they have several minions and it becomes my choice which one, right?
Yeah,
right?
You get agency, which is always a good thing. It's like, I wanted it to be a card that demands an answer, and if you can't answer, you lose. I think 3 health as the target to hit for getting the troll off the board is not insurmountable.
Sure.
You got a couple tools in the pre-made deck, and then certainly even more tools in the extended set of cards that can do that. And I also like that it's the idea of, all right, I probably want to hang on to this hungry wolf, but if I draw a troll, or if the villain draws a troll on their turn, like, it would kind of be nice to...
I'd be glad I had this, yeah.
And then you're thinking, how many trolls have I seen this game? How many cards are left in the deck? And
yep.
It adds a bit of intrigue to, the decision to play a minion or not. On opening turns, I've actually had some people say, and I think it is a strong strategy to just take that first turn off as the player, and kind of, like in
Hoard
football, like, we defer, so you defer over to the villain, which is great if you have a reactive hand, and if you can play reactively, which is terrible if the villain draws a forest troll on their opening turn.
Yeah.
Because it's a quarter of your health in one shot.
Yep, plus whatever else they drew.
Plus whatever else they drew.
It's more minions than that, yeah.
So yeah, it is, if you're playing against Cullen, I want you to constantly be worried about these trolls. Like counting how many you've seen, how many have come out.
Mission accomplished.
Good, yes. This is definitely a set defining or a scenario defining minion. And that said, it also is a bit of a trap for new players. It's the evil side of me coming out here. And then a lot of times new players, because it's such big stats, will just shell out the 2 cards straight up to play it. And they'll do it any time that they can. And they'll play the troll without protection or without friends. Or they'll play it when maybe there's a high probability of getting the combo that we'll talk about in a second. And I think it's been really interesting watching, because I've had some, I worked with some previewers who were new to CCGs in general, like didn't have that vocabulary. And watching them process through like, oh, unless I've got card advantage pretty well in hand, or unless it's a key moment for me to press, I should probably hang on to this.
Right.
Like, or there's better ways to use this. And that's exactly like the kind of realization I'm hoping people kind of go through when they play with the trolls. Yeah,
I think it's to the point where I'll only pay for it, or play it for its cost pretty much in the late game if it's going to take me across the finish line, right? Like I've already got that dam or that mesmerist, so I know if I play it, it's not going to die on the villain turn, and then it can get at least 5 damage in. Otherwise, I just reordered my plan to talk about, so we'll get to regeneration next. But I actually will often discard the troll as a cost, rather to pay something else's cost rather than pay for it, because it's so steep, and it's for it being as big, beefy a boy as it is, like it's a little fragile. Like it dies a lot. 3
health is attainable.
And so I would say, as a general statement, like, not worth its cost. Right? Yeah.
And certainly playing alone onto an empty board, not worth its cost.
Right.
I'm sure someone will come up with a deck or a build or a reason why you would want to do that. I can think of a couple already. Like if you need to make sure you save some health, you probably want to get the troll down, if that's your only option. But
you're probably not going to win that game, though.
Probably not going to win that game. It's a desperation play. Yeah. But it's almost, again, a game without a mana system. How do you find ways to have these minions that feel like they are bigger and scarier and are meant to come out in the late game? And so it's kind of cool to hear you describe it that way, of like, okay, this is a late game minion. This is meant to come out as things are coming to their climax. Or it's meant to show up early if you can be clever enough.
Right.
And the villain can just get it for free whenever. Because
speaking of being clever enough, There's a spell where a dead troll itself, I think, is in the art.
Yes,
Right.
troll skeleton.
Regeneration, which is a spell that says if a minion is on top of the discard pile, move it into play exhausted, without resolving its card text. So that means when it comes to costs, skipping their costs, right? On the villain side, it does the same. It does move it into play exhausted, which is the one rules mistake we pointed out on our playthrough.
Oh, sure. Yep.
Yeah. So
that's the only time that villains don't get to attack with the minion they draw on that turn.
Is when they regenerate it, which is nice. But the villain does draw another card.
Oh, you didn't think you were getting off that either?
No. And so this card, I've used it on other things, but in this, in Colin, against Colin, oh, and I guess it's a Colin card, so it always shows up in Colin's deck. But
yeah,
it seems to exist largely to reanimate trolls.
Yeah, as it, anyone who's played D&D knows that trolls and regeneration are a thing.
Oh, that's true.
If that wasn't heavy-handed enough, we made the art have a troll skeleton on it. And I think I want a Deck of Wonders. Like, it's a difficult game, and there's I think there's lots of room for mastery in it. I hope so. But I also was very conscious of this being something that a new player could come to, because again, this is for the parent who is looking for something to fill that time, or is looking for that experience, who may not be the hardcore MTG player. And so Regeneration and Troll and Forest Troll being in the same set was very much meant to be kind of that teaching moment. Where it's the game trying to show you a cool combo that you can do.
Cards can combine in ways that make them much stronger. Yeah.
And so yeah, we wanted to do all sorts of stuff in the naming and the art to hint to the player, like, this is the thing against Cullen. This is how you get him. And then there's other ways to win against Cullen, of course. But that is getting that combo and getting it to stick is a big strong strategy against him.
Right. And then you've got to be because the combo works just as well for Cullen. You got to be careful, particularly not to leave a troll on top of the discard pile going into the villain's turn if you can avoid it, right? Which
it's happened to everyone.
Yeah, which the rules of the game do let you, whenever things simultaneously go to the discard pile, put them in whatever order you want. So it becomes second nature to think about that every time you're throwing a handful of cards in the discard pile.
Bury your trolls, or you turn set them on fire.
And it's interesting because it can also even be kind of a Hail Mary play where it's like probably the only way that I'm going to win this game is if I draw a Regeneration and there's a troll on top. So I'm going to leave that troll on top knowing that the villain could be the one to get it, but hoping that they don't and I draw the Regeneration and get it back.
Yeah, there's no more fun move, or it's like the 360 no scope headshot of this game is discarding a troll with like your lightning strike or your ent, which we'll get to, that cycles a card, not having Regeneration in your hand,
and then
having the resulting troll resulting draw pull a Regeneration.
I've been there. It feels good.
Yeah, that's a stand up from your chair and celebrate moment.
Right. A way to deal with the troll, conveniently also in Colin's deck, is the Poison Toad. I love this art too. The kind of, I know that these aren't good versus evil in their art direction, but this one feels like a good toad and a bad toad.
It's Battletoads, if I can go.
Battletoads. I don't know. A new one of those came out recently, and it's not great. I don't know if that's the reference you want to make. Yeah. This has a cost of discarding a card. It's a 1/1 2 priority, so it's right there in the middle. And it has poison, which means destroy any minion this minion deals damage to. And as we discussed, that even cuts through shields. So, and then on the villain side, it's the same thing, just without the cost, because
villains
have the favor of fates.
Treatment.
Yeah. This card,
little minion, big punch.
Yeah, so this card also really has a big impact on the flow of the game of this matchup. I don't feel like I have really figured out how to use it well. I feel like when it's the bane of my existence on Colin's side, and when I get it, it always gets like Gust of Winded, or they end up trading a Pixie Mesmerist into it, or something that is not that satisfying to take out because it's small too. I don't know. It's tough to make work.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of Deck of Wonders is played on defense.
Hmm.
And part of that is thematic because I like the idea that you are like the core fantasy of Deck of Wonders is outplaying an objectively more powerful opponent. And that means that you should feel like you're on your back foot most of the time.
Right.
Part of that is also just like to make things work as a solo game and to have a solo AI doing things and you having agency.
Yep.
Like a lot of stuff happens on the villain turn that you're controlling, that you're influencing. But if you're like, well, when does a lot of the battle happen? When does a lot of the damage get dealt? It's on the villain turn. And so I think the Poison Toad is a surprisingly defensive minion. And it's one that you want to play. You almost want to play knowing that it's going to die, or knowing how it's going to die.
Yeah. Although as lower priority, you sometimes don't have as much agency as you want.
That's right.
In that. Yeah.
It can take out literally anything, no matter how protected that thing is, and that had to come with a cost. Especially because if you wind up able to shield this yourself, now you're able to take out 2 of anything.
Right.
And that gets that's a huge swing. In fact, if you can run it into reinforced dams, which we'll get to in a second, it can take out 3 or 4 of anything, and you wind up if you play the Poison Toad at the right time, you get these massive value swings out of it, where you're able to shield it and then run 3 different things into it, and suddenly a game that looked hopeless, you're suddenly back.
You've turned it around. Yeah. It's a real swing card.
The flip side, obviously, as you pointed out, is that Cullen gets to attack with it right away, and it's going to take out something.
Right.
Or if even if it comes onto an empty board, unlike Lightning Strike or another card that we'll talk about in a second, it's going to hang out. It's going to stick around, and you're going to have to answer it somehow. Hopefully, that means playing a smaller minion into it. But yeah, Poison Toad is interesting in there's a couple different ways you can use it on defense that I think are really powerful.
So you're gonna have to help me out with Tree Herd.
Yeah, I went for Shepherd, but with tree instead of sheep, and it didn't work.
Because I was gonna say this does not appear to be a herd of Ents.
Yeah, no.
Okay.
It's I totally see how you read it that way. You're not the only one to think that. So yeah, it is a shepherd, but for trees, which is a tree herd, which is not a thing until I tried to make it a thing and failed. So that's Ent Tree Herd right
where we're at. All right. So it is a 3/3/3, 3 attack, 3 health, and 3 priority. And then it has that cycle a card cost. Discard 1 and draw 1. And then no effect at all, just a vanilla 3/3 on the villain side. So it just kind of, it's really very similar to a Pixie Cavalry, right? It has 1 more attack, which is crucial because it can take out trolls. And it dies to all the same things. I think in general, I like the cycle a card cost, right? Like I think so.
Similar.
It definitely, if you get down to where you're top decking and have no cards in hand, it hurts. But but if you're playing cautiously with your hand, you can usually say like, okay, I'll gladly, or you can even take that Hail Mary and discard the troll, hoping the top of the deck is a regeneration.
That's right, and then celebrate if it happens.
Right, all right there. So, I guess I don't have any particularly strong thoughts on this one.
Yeah, well, it's this was meant to be kind of the benchmark minion that other cycle cards were compared against.
Okay.
So this was one of the cards that was very early in the game's design, and I was like, okay, some cards you're going to pay with a cost, some cards are free, and some are going to cycle. About what kind of value should you get from a cycle card? And the Ent Tree Herd was the avatar for that. And so that represents what kind of value you're getting from a cycle card. And so if a cycle card is better, it should be situationally better. Or if it's worse, there should be upsides or what have you. So yeah, if you want to know what's going on in my mind as I evaluate cards across the game, you can hold me to it. Be like, okay, this cycle card is objectively worse than Ent Tree Herd. You need to make it better. Or this cycle card is objectively better. You need to make it worse.
It always has that wrinkle though of it's better or worse for the villain at the same time.
Right.
Like,
Well, and there's so many dimensions to balance along.
right.
I can make it better for the player. I can make it worse for the villain. I can make it higher or lower priority.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun. It's fun to have those tools at your disposal.
It is. You've got a lot of levers, a lot of buttons to push on these.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
The Ent in addition, I think is one of the cards. We talked about the Troll being a late game card.
mm-hmm.
I think the Ent for me is a very strong early game card.
True.
Like I'm always happy to see this in my opening hand, whereas I'm not always quite as happy to see a Troll in my opening hand.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I completely agree because that cycle is extremely welcome when you have a handful of cards, right? There's usually something that you can.
You have max agency.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Next up, I love the art on this reinforced dam. We've alluded to this a couple times because it does play a really unique role in this set of cards.
Mm-hmm.
It is a 0 attack, 4 health minion structure set of beavers, whatever, whatever it is. It has 4 priority, which means that if the villain can kill this, it will spend a lot of its attacks for that turn doing it. And if it can't, this protects everything else at the expense of your health because it goes for your face. So it's again, this along with Earth Shield is kind of the other time that it feels a little bit counterintuitive in some ways because you feel like you're putting up a dam. It should protect your face, right?
This is my big giant wall to protect. Who knew that just putting up a wall won't protect you? Don't at me. No. But yeah, no, it's that kind of situation where you put up this big beefy minion, it's very high health stats, you feel like, aha, I've protected myself. But really what you've done is you've protected other minions.
Right.
Probably at expense to yourself.
Yeah.
This also has one of the most interesting interactions, which I need to make clearer for people, with Earth Shield. Because even though the reinforced dam has 0 damage or 0 attack, it still attacks. And technically this still will tap and deal its damage.
It still reduces or it still removes an Earth Shield if it attacks.
It will still remove an Earth Shield. And then especially important is on your turn, if you have a poison toad out and the villain has a reinforced dam out, and they've got something else to follow that up with that will eventually kill the poison toad, you can put the reinforced dam in front of whatever's eventually going to attack the toad, and the reinforced dam will attack the toad and die. There's a lot of steps to that.
Yeah, you might have slightly lost me there.
Yeah. And it's one of those things where it follows the rules. Like it all is internally consistent, but to make it intuitive is something I'm still trying to make sure happens. But,
sure.
The rule is that the villain minions will attack one at a time in order, targeting the highest priority minion.
Mm-hmm.
If a poison toad is the highest priority minion, and the reinforced dam is first in the order, it will still attack the poison toad.
Right.
It will deal 0 damage and take the 1 point of poison damage back from the toad, which will destroy it.
You can't think too hard about why the toad's poison destroyed a dam.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's where it's like it's a minion, but it's a giant structure, and then I just fell so in love with the art that it was like, we'll put a cute beaver on it. It'll make it all okay.
Yeah. I think it works.
Yeah, it's definitely one of the limits of the naming conventions.
Sure.
But yeah, so it is. Again, that is one of the most like weird counterintuitive things about the rules. But it's also a big element in keeping you in games that could go either way.
And then we haven't even talked about the villain side of this yet, which works a little differently.
Oh, yeah.
Because it has the keyword taunt, which means you must destroy this minion before attacking any minion or villain without taunt. So it kind of works on the villain side like my mind wants to think it works on the player side, right? Where it protects the villain's other minions and the villain's face, because you have to destroy this first. And it's if you've played Hearthstone, it works similarly to Hearthstone, where you have to attack taunt minions first, right? So I don't know. I like this card. I think it's a card that does it pulls good weight for the villain sometimes, but I'm also not terribly crushed when it's drawn.
Yeah, it can grind your progress to a halt. I mean, just like a giant dam across a river would.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's dealing 0 damage to you, which is a lot better than something else that's going to be aggressive.
Right.
And so this is a card that buys you time, or conversely buys the villain time. So whereas, I mean, we talked about earlier, the Gnomish Servant is gasoline. It's an accelerant. The reinforced dam is a stall tool. So you tell me what you want to do with your deck.
What's the car metaphor for that? It's the brakes, I guess.
Oh no!
You can't say one's gasoline and the other's a stall tool. That's not a thing.
Yeah, let's say it's brakes. I think brakes is the right thing. And the water of the river breaks against the dam.
There we go. Yeah, all right. You got your dad joke in.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's reinforced dam.
All right. Sweet. Yeah. That's reinforced. I don't know why.
It is. It's like I almost want to try to use this as a rules explainer because I know this is an unsolved problem in the back of my mind constantly. Is like, how do I make the interaction between particularly dam, poison, and earth shield, the holy trinity there, as intuitive as possible? Right. I haven't gotten there yet. Like I'm very honest with myself. I haven't gotten there yet on making it intuitive. It does work. It follows a consistent logic, and once players understand that logic, they I really like the way it plays. I'm still looking for the right way to make all of those interactions as crystal clear as possible.
Just wait until there's a spell that attaches to it and can make the dam poisonous. then you've got a real situation to figure out.
There we go. Yeah. Oh goodness.
We've got a couple Cullen spells left. Baited Trap. I think our friend the wolf shows up again in this one, right?
Yeah, he's hiding in the background there, and then very much in the foreground.
Yeah, that you'd think that the squirrel is going to be the victim of that trap, but you flip the card over. Plot twist. It's our poor wolf always gets the short end of the stick.
It's poor Scrat.
I love this card though. It costs 1 to play as the player, and it destroys a minion. Any minion of your choice, which is pretty amazing. On the villain side, it destroys it has no costs, obviously, because the villain doesn't really pay costs in the same way. But it only destroys the lowest priority player minion, which for now is usually, at least in this matchup, is usually a Gnomish Servant or something my experience has been that I don't usually mind this too much. It sucks if all you have is a troll. Right? Because when you're down to 1 minion, this is just as bad as Lightning Strike. It's going to take out all you got.
Yes.
But
this is a really interesting card to talk about how it's balanced and the different things that you have as an advantage and the different things that you are giving up. And I think it goes back to the idea of uncertainty. Same thing that drives the cycle cost cards. Because the one thing Lightning Strike has going for it, I will say, as a removal spell, is if it's killing a minion, it's kind of the minion you knew was in the crosshairs anyway, right? Like the highest priority minion is what's going to get attacked first if you draw a villain minion or any other number of things. And so as you're playing and plotting out your game and developing your strategy, you kind of know that whatever is highest priority is likeliest to die. And so while Lightning Strike sucks in that it makes that happen, it's also kind of what you expected to happen.
Compared to this one, kind of pulls the rug out from under you a little more.
Exactly. And like you said, if you're able to make sure that you've bracketed whatever's important with a Gnomish Servant or with something else small and low on the priority scale, great. Like that's fantastic on your side. However, if you are counting on the fact that something has only protectors on the top end, keeping it alive, which if you've got 2 minions out, that's probably the case, Baited Trap is much more likely to upend your strategy or do something unexpected from the villain. And that's kind of, I think, the twist that Baited Trap has on it, where if you, for most of the game, for almost any other card in the game, you're planning on that highest priority minion to be in the crosshairs. For Baited Trap, that's the one place that's not the case.
Yeah, so this is a cool example of how you have to think a little differently against each villain, right?
Sure, yes.
You got to keep this in the back of your mind against Cullen, in particular, that your lowest priority minion is always vulnerable, more so than it might be in other matchups, because this is a specific Cullen card. The other villains may not may not threaten it in the same way. Your poison toad can
Exactly.
be free for. Oh, wait, that's also a colon
through.
card. But anyway,
Well, it's interesting, and I haven't talked much about this, but there is that whole unlock aspect. So as you win against a villain, you will start kind of winning its cards over into your collection, and you'll start being able to use baited trap against other villains.
I don't think I knew that about the way that
well, there you go.
The way that it unfolds. Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
So eventually, Cullen's minions and spells will start defecting, right? We'll be like, I want to hang out with that guy, and they'll come over to your side. They'll be in your collection, and you want that hard removal, like you said. That is powerful for the player. Get rid of anything, like get out of jail free card. All right, and you get to choose the target. Even better. The downside of that is that you're going to have that unpredictability.
Right. All right, we're down to one card.
If you're down to one card, this is a card you want in your hand. Because
well
played.
Draw
a lot more cards.
Because this is Guerrilla Tactics. Mm-hmm. It's a spell that says if there are 2 or more villain minions in play, then draw 2. And on the villain side, it says it's actually, this is unique in that it does something completely different for the villain. Right? Mm-hmm. And it says if there are 4 or more player minions at play, then destroy all player minions. And of course, make matters worse, draw 1.
Draw 1. Yeah.
So, yeah, you're absolutely right. If you get down to where you're top decking, this is generally a card you're really happy to see come up. Although, if the villain didn't have 2 minions, not necessarily.
I've never been more disappointed than when I'm hanging on to a Guerrilla Tactics and the villain has a Gnomish Servant. And I'm like, I'll just wait a turn, and the villain will draw something else that will allow me to get value out of Guerrilla Tactics. And then it draws a Forest Troll, which squashes the Servant, makes things infinitely worse for me. And I can't use Guerrilla Tactics still.
Yeah,
so
brutal.
I've gotten into that situation. But this card is very much meant to be a statement about the kind of strategic approach you're going to take. Because of that villain side. I mean, that is crushingly punishing.
Oh yeah.
To wipe your board and to draw a card for the villain. That is brutal.
Yeah, I mean, as you get to know this matchup, like this basically might as well be printed on Cullen himself saying you cannot have more than 3 minions, right? Like you play around that pretty carefully, and it makes sense to me. It's a wise design for kind of the starting the teaching villain, right? To keep the board a little bit simpler, not get these really complex board states. But yeah, you know that if you ever put that fourth minion into play, then you are tempting fate, right?
Yeah. Oh, I like it.
Which I intentionally use. Yeah.
And it's interesting because that is sometimes it can be the right decision. Let's say maybe you've seen 2 Guerrilla Tactics already. You feel like by loading up the board you can end the game in 2 or 3 turns.
Right.
Then it does become a risk that you might be willing to take. Of okay, I think I can win before I see Guerrilla Tactics, or alternately, I think I will trade away enough minions in the next turn to get me back under.
Right.
And that's kind of it's almost the overclocking, right?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go above my limit. I'm gonna go into the danger zone for a short amount of time, knowing I could get completely blown up because there's some advantage on the other side that helps me get to win.
Yep, and I've been there. The completely blown up part. Yeah.
There's no better way to guarantee you draw Guerrilla Tactics next turn than to have four
playing that
out.
4th minion. Oh, and then he draws another card.
Yeah, and then you are back to square one. I have won games after getting board wiped by Guerrilla Tactics, so it's not a death sentence. All
right, I have not.
But it's about as close as you can come. It's also like thematically the idea of using Guerrilla Tactics in this battle in a forest. Cullen's in a forest, and the idea of if you're willing to play from behind, you can suddenly gang up on him, right? You can surprise him by intentionally putting yourself behind. And on the alternate side, if you become too big and heavy and cumbersome, you're gonna get blown up by the smaller, more agile force.
Yeah, I love I love when flavor interlocks with mechanics like that. It's like this means keep your force small, stealthy, sneak in with the smaller numbers.
Yeah. And
And then
it's that, if you put it in your deck, you know that you always have the chance to come roaring back into a lost cause. But you also always have the chance, if you get too far ahead, to get blown up.
yeah, it really does set the like boundaries on both sides. Huh?
Yeah.
It's the catch-up mechanism in a way. It's the blue shell of the Colin deck.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah. But I feel like I'm saying this about every card now, but it's absolutely one of the cards that you're constantly like, okay, how many have I seen? How likely is it to be drawn? And you're the troll, poison toads, dams. You're kind of mentally keeping track of every single one of those,
right,
to inform what the best move is situationally.
Oh, and then the top part, I'm curious. So this is the only card that we've looked at in the Colin deck that draws more than one card. I guess is this kind of clearly that it's applied pretty is stingily a word?
Sparingly. There we go. I'll go sparingly.
Sparing. Thank you. Sparingly, and it's very situational. Is that kind of what you can expect to see from card draw cards in Deck of Wonders?
Yeah. Oh, maybe I'll reveal some new information here.
Oh, please do.
Yeah. So what I'll say is there is at least one other card in each set that will draw more than one card.
Okay.
So every set has at least one card that can get those bigger draw swings, and I've tried to make sure that it is highly conditional, or comes with a big downside.
Interesting. All right.
For the villain. So
cards are both more options, and they are your resource. So drawing extra cards is huge. It's a big leg up when it happens.
Yeah, I was especially in a smaller. Well, I don't know if it's a smaller deck game with 56 cards in your deck. I've seen so many turns where you draw guerrilla tactics into guerrilla tactics.
Oh, sure.
And then you've drawn, plus your starting draw, you've drawn 5 cards that turn, which is 10% of your deck in a single turn. Like, holy crap.
And because guerrilla tactics doesn't change the board, I guess the second one, the third one is always going to work. Huh?
yeah. Which, again, you are, by including this in your deck, you're saying, I'm never going to be that far ahead, but I'm never going to be that far behind.
Right.
It's a playing field leveler, which if you're going to engage in that kind of mid-rangey duel is great. Like that's fine. If you're trying to play, more of a stall or control type of deck, that maybe could be more difficult.
Right. Okay, that does it. We made it.
Yeah, that was so much fun.
I think in over an hour and a half on the clock. So we went places.
Yeah, I can't wait to be completely wrong about every single one of these cards once people crack the game open and really get into it.
I think if one thing is certain about the release of Deck of Wonders, it is going to be that, right? Like every card game, it's like, sure, you play tested it 1,000 times, but wait until it's played 1,000,000 times.
Yeah, God, that would be nice if it's that popular. I'll say I've play tested it 400 times, and I know I've scratched the surface. And I know I routinely find situations or interactions or just strategic decisions where I'm legitimately like, I'm out of my depth. I need an adult. which gets me excited. I can't wait for the community to get their hands on this game. And thank you for being kind of one of the first people to step in and look at it with that critical eye.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. Awesome. I am nothing if not critical.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, this was a total blast. Thank you so much for joining me. One more time, Deck of Wonders is on Kickstarter now. If you're viewing this within a week or two of it going live on YouTube. If not, still type Deck of Wonders into the internet, and I bet you can find some late pledge options or
I hope so, yes.
Or some some opportunities to buy it. But links to the Kickstarter, to your social media, all the ways that you can see more from Dennis.
I'm betting you're putting stuff up there now.
I was gonna say in the description. You can only put so many links up there before people stop paying attention.
Okay, got it. Then it looks like I was just like really rolling my eyes at you.
Well, this has been a pleasure. Please come back anytime, whether we want to talk more Deck of Wonders or whether you have any other games you love that you want to discuss. I'm always up for it. And any parting thoughts?
No, this has been a blast. And again, I really do want to hear from anyone who's interacted with the game and has thoughts on Tabletop Simulator or once the game is out or in any form. Like, I need all that community perspective, and it's
Yes.
always made the game better.
Well, to those of you who watch us, thank you so much for joining us for this ride. Deck of Wonders can be played now on Tabletop Simulator. I highly recommend it. Even when you just got the one deck, there's a lot of fun to be had there. There's clearly hundreds of games, and you'll still be out of your depth.
Yes, indeed.
Or at least Dennis was.
That's right. Low bar, very low bar.
So yeah, let me know how your games go. I look forward to hearing about it. And yeah, with that, we'll call it a night. So thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And until next time, be optimal.